episode of Stay Hot. I'm BLAIDEN, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. We're back with another mailbag episode. Today we asked on Twitter for your NFL hot takes going into the upcoming season, and you guys delivered with a bang. I think we had like 120 replies, so we've got some good stuff that we've picked out to discuss today. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you doing on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, the end of June?
It is the end of June. Oh, wow.
I'm in a great mood. I'm in great spirits. We found a place to live next year, and like it's in the perfect location. It's super walkable. It's super affordable. It's got fiber internet. Like it's so money. And I'm moving in a couple weeks, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So that's been good. Finding a place is like such a pain, and it's such like a monkey on your back because you can spend all day working on it. Look at all these places on Zillow, contact everybody, send out a bunch of emails, go visit a bunch of places. And like, if they suck, you've made no progress essentially. So it's nice to have it done and not to just have to like settle for a place, but get like, pretty much everything that I was hoping for. So I'm fantastic.
That's excellent news, Matt. I got so lucky with this place that I'm at. I was just walking around and saw the sign and just went on the website. And it was just like, fuck it, I'll apply. And sight unseen, I got the place within 24 hours of seeing the sign. I had the keys. It happened very, very fast. And it's a great place.
That is the most Theo Ash way to get an apartment.
Just wandering around and found one. But you didn't live in Denver at the time, did you?
Well, that's the thing. I was going to get a place, but then there were issues, so I never ended up signing the lease. And then I moved to Denver without a place to stay. Me and Cammie were not living together at the time, but I was just staying at her place here in Denver. And then for a year, we were just going to be neighbors. And so then I just applied at the place next to hers. And
nice.
It ended up being a good spot. So like better than the place that she had. So that we kind of lucked out there. But yeah, and the first place I would have applied to and then things went wrong was not as good as this place. So initially I thought I was screwed. But then
I was so upset when I got like I didn't get a place that was like $200 more expensive and worse. Mm-hmm. So
let that be a lesson to everybody at home. Just because a door gets closed doesn't mean that all your doors get closed. There could be a better door down the line that you will now find.
I almost got a condo, and then there were some issues that I didn't want to like deal with an HOA and stuff. And the HOA fees were about to go up to like $1,000 a month, like a month after I was gonna like move in. And then
nuts, dude.
Yeah, no, it was totally ridiculous. And then I found my house, which is cheaper in a better area and nicer. So,
and it's a house.
And it's a house, which means I can have band practice here, which rocks.
That's very true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I really like your place right now.
Thanks, man. It means a lot.
So everybody at home, think about that when the player your team picks becomes a massive bust. It simply means that the next guy that you pick will
that's true.
Could be better.
That's true. And yeah, man. So all the Stay Hot guys are doing great. Matt found a place. Theo, I guess you didn't discuss your day, but it sounds like you're doing well. And my flag football team is undefeated.
And you won the championship.
We won the championship. 8-0. Perfect season.
Perfect season. I believe you had multiple interceptions.
I had an interception. I had at least an interception in every single game this year. I had one in the first playoff game we did, and then I had two in the championship game, including the game winner.
Bang.
They're calling him 2016 Malik Hooker.
I was the championship MVP. So,
wow. From the bottom to the top, this guy couldn't buy a win last time I talked to him about.
No, we were really so bad last year. But this dude that like the captain of this team, He's been recruiting guys every time he like beats a
super team.
He literally every time he would beat a team last year, he would like go up to the best player and just be like, yeah.
Notice how Blaiden Kirk didn't demand a trade, didn't ask out in free agency, stayed the course. It's a 2011 Dirk ring, man. It just means more.
Anyway, let's get into some of these hot takes.
Yes, we've got some questions from our Twitter as well as some anonymous questions. But this first one comes from Liam Beer saying the Cowboys will be third in the division. And there was another tweet following that saying that the Cowboys ceiling was like 9-8.
A lot of people were low on the Cowboys. I have to agree. Third in the division would be incredibly hard to see barring a Dak injury, you know?
Right.
People are just way too... They're convinced the Cowboys' window has closed when really it's just still open. And their window is the same as it was. Their ceiling is the same as it was, which has not been even to the NFC Championship game. So that's all disappointing. But they still could make it there, and they could still get to the second round. They could win that division. Who had a more concerning exit, the Eagles or the Cowboys? I think it's way more likely they win the division than end up finishing third. And the way people talk about Dallas, it's like they're absolutely cooked. I feel like no one would have them winning the division anymore. Like, I feel like it's a hot take to say they could win 10 games. I still think that team is going to be pretty formidable in the NFC. I really don't see it. Like, who would be better? Who is passing them? The Giants?
I think a lot of people just look at like wins above, or not even wins above replacement, but like wins added, I guess. And that kind of chart where you can see like the total number of resources gained in an off season. And people are like, well, if you didn't get better, you got worse, which to an extent is true. But the teams behind them were so far behind them to begin with that I don't know if they could have made up enough ground in a single off season to pass them.
And what strides did they make the year before? I feel like we were kind of saying that about the Cowboys last year, is they kind of hit a ceiling. Maybe this is the year they regress a little bit. At least that's what I thought. And then they just kept chugging along and were a good regular season team, bad playoff team. And I just think that can so easily happen again. I like Mike Zimmer. They got They got the best defensive player, maybe the best offensive player as well. It's not going to be so horrible.
Yeah, I think I can agree that it's hard to imagine them third in the division. Washington does not project to be very good. The Giants don't project to be very good. Those just aren't as complete rosters as the Cowboys. Maybe if you believe that like the Giants will get a little bit more of the offensive magic back, and Burns' addition will maybe make them a little bit more formidable on defense, you could see like 7 wins as your projection for them. But at the end of the day, like the Cowboys hitting their ceiling does not mean that they're going to win 6 games next year, right? Now, I might agree that they're sort of locked into the roster that they have. And if you don't feel like that team is good enough to win a Super Bowl, I could get down with that. And they might just be another divisional round or wild card exit or whatever. But I still think they're good enough to where I could see them getting the breaks and being in a conference championship game pretty easily. And I certainly don't see them as a team that's going to have a losing record. A 12-win regular season would feel more likely than an 8. Again, obviously all of it hinges on like health of a few key guys. So maybe we're looking at, the end of next year. Like if Parsons or CD or Dak goes down, obviously that changes things. But I think if we're talking about teams where none of their key players go down, I think there's no shot that the Cowboys finish that low.
I mean, just count the good players, right?
Right.
I mean, that's all you have to do.
And the elite players. I mean, first of all, you're getting much better quarterback play with Dallas than you are the other 2 teams that we project below them. And then I'm projecting better defensive play as well. So like, where does that leave you? Like, what's the path for the other teams? I just don't see it. Maybe Daniels is just rookie of the year and like one of the best rookies of the year ever. But I don't know about that. Their line isn't as good as the Cowboys are. Like, their secondary isn't as good as the Cowboys. Like nothing is as good as the Cowboys. Maybe the Giants line is as good now with Lawrence and Burns together, but that's really the only unit that maybe they have on them. And a Karake, so like the front seven, maybe I'd take the Giants, but I just don't see the firepower from the bottom two teams in this division. And I think I like the Cowboys more. I don't know if I like them more than the Eagles. But
it's something to think about, you know. I feel like that's much more of a discussion than do we like Washington or the Giants more than Dallas.
Totally. And the Eagles have skirted all slander this year. Like they finished way more concerning than the Cowboys. The Cowboys got blown out in the playoffs. It sucked. It was horrible. Like the Eagles blowout was more embarrassing. It was worse. And I guess they had the better offseason because they signed Devin White and they drafted Cooper DeJean and Mitchell. And I think people are higher on that draft than the Cowboys draft. But really, you know, a draft is a draft. Who knows how it's going to pan out? Like the Eagles were in more of a free fall than the Cowboys towards the end. And
I also
the
think
Eagles are projected to bounce back. And
I also think people chalked up more of the Eagles' issues to coaching in the brain drain, and when I think you're going to expect them to have better coaching this year. Even
Sirianni's
though I know Sirianni's still there, but you're not going to have Matt Patricia running things.
We were asking a few weeks ago, what exactly does Sirianni do? So them changing the non-Sirianni coaches maybe should feel like to us that things could be different. I do think I like the Eagles more than the Cowboys still, loosely thinking about it here. But I certainly disagree with the idea that they're going to finish as anything other than second in the West, unless something major changes. And I think a lot of it stems from Dak. I think people really, really underrate Dak, especially if we're talking about like how he's going to play in the regular season. Like he's going to be probably one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the regular season again next year. He's almost like the Jason Tatum of the NFL. It feels like a little bit where it's like, I can't believe, although, you know, Tatum had a tough final series and I get that. But like even before that, people have been so anti-Tatum. And I don't think that I don't think Dak is like a top 5 QB or anything, but I do think he's still very good. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on him because they think he's not in that tier 1, so he's bad. And in reality, he's not in that tier 1 and he's just outside of it and still really good to me.
Yeah, he was the best. He's the best quarterback in the division.
He had a real chance at. He's the best quarterback in the division. I mean, I think Hurts is close enough. I think they're very, very different guys.
That's true. The power running that Jalen adds is something that no one else
that stuff
really
is incredibly
does.
valuable.
I'm taking Dak over Hurts, though. I really am.
So am I.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think I might be in the same camp, but it's close.
Oh yeah. But we reject that hot take here on the Stay Hot panel. Presses a button, a trapdoor opens out from under this Twitter user, and he falls into the pit of bad takes.
It's the you gotta face the rancor now.
And we apologize that you did know
we
the
are not
stakes
appeased
when you responded to our Twitter question. You did know you were gonna fall into the pit, so
that's true.
You are in the pit, buddy.
This next one comes from Elliot saying that the Texans are going to miss the playoffs and Stroud will struggle more than he did last year.
Narratively, the Texans are like the Lions last year. People are starting to get sick of hearing about them. So now they're a little bit overrated. And it's possible that like if you went and talked to the average person, like they'd think the Texans are going to be a little bit better than maybe we should be expecting. Like everything is trending up and was trending up at the end of last year, but that doesn't guarantee that that's going to be true going into next season. That I can strongly agree with the Texans. However, it's also easy to get too low on them because you feel like people are too high on them. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. It's definitely possible. The AFC is competitive. I think it's more likely than the Dallas stuff. But I still believe that that's going to be overall like a very threatening offense and a defense that's only improving.
I think that the main issue that I could see is just that the AFC South is so competitive. And I think that division is just going to be more of a dogfight than people are giving it credit for. Like, I'm really high on the Colts. The Jags, I know this is another hot take people are going to have, is that the Jags are going to bounce back and Trevor Lawrence is, going to be that top 5 contention. And then the Titans, honestly, don't look that far off either. They've still got some holes for sure. They're definitely the furthest off than the other teams here, but I think this division is a lot closer than we give it credit for.
Yeah, I got the Texans taking it though. I mean, last time we talked about Stroud at number 4 in the fantasy quarterback rankings. That was a little rich for me, and I think some of the Stroud
in
stuff
terms of
has
fantasy too.
Yeah, it has kind of jumped the shark a little bit. Like, I don't think it's a lock that he's the MVP of the league. I think that a sophomore slump is possible with him. I mean, we saw Lawrence have a great season and then fall off in 2023. It can happen to anybody, but I just they snuck out a win last year, and then I like what they did in free agency. I love the Autry signing. I think they got better on the edge with Hunter, or at least were able to replace Grenard, certainly. Stingley really broke out towards the end. I think that he could have a really special season. Diggs may not be the guy he once was, but they don't need him to be. They still got Laramie Tunsil, best left tackle in the game, maybe. I think that the Colts are exciting. The Jaguars are exciting. The Titans are exciting. But the Texans have for sure the guy at quarterback, which the Colts and Titans don't have. As much as I love Richardson, and they've got the weapons, they've got the line. Like, I think Ryans is a good head coach. Like, I just like their core too much to say they're actually going to miss the playoffs. Maybe some other team is really good. Maybe the Colts hit their ceiling, which I agree. BLAIDEN is extremely high, and they're just amazing. They look like the Eagles from a couple years ago or something like that if Richardson really hits. But
that is who they remind me of, is the 20.
But even then, I think the Texans could make the wild card, because I do definitely like them better than the Titans and Jaguars. And I like them better than the Jets. I like them better than the Steelers. I like them better than the Browns. I like them better than a lot of teams that would also be contending for that wild card spot. So I think it's, I think that they'll make it. I do.
I think they're going to make it as well. I agree. The Colts hitting their ceiling is a risk, and it could threaten the Texans in the division. The Jaguars should also be good. And because of the way that, like, single score games can break or not break, like, they're definitely in it. But on paper, there is absolutely no way that I could look at the Jaguars and be like, they are better than the Texans right now. I can't. It's not impossible they finish higher, injuries, whatever, but there is absolutely no shot. I would predict that at the moment.
Yeah, I think the Texans had a better offseason than the Jaguars did, and the Texans were starting ahead of them.
The Jaguars didn't beat the Texans last year, and the Jaguars, they didn't have some great offseason. If it wasn't for the Brian Thomas Jr. pick, honestly, I'd feel really Armstead as well. That's
Armstead is also a nice pickup, but they made a lot of like bad moves in a vacuum. Like, I remember until they signed Armstead, I was like, what are they?
And those bad moves are still there. I mean, like, it's still a lot of that. And I'll also say this: there are a lot of competitive teams in the AFC, but I'm not even sure that the AFC South is like one of the hardest 2 divisions in the AFC. Is it?
The AFC North is certainly harder.
The AFC North is really hard.
But I think I think the Titans could be a little bit better. But to be honest with you, like, Levis is interesting, and I'm excited to watch him. But I think he's far from a sure thing. I think they still have holes on the offensive line. I don't think the receiver room is really that great. It's good. And if Levis is good, it should be good enough, but it's not some like big winning unit. Like, I don't see their offense as like a huge threat. And then defensively, they still have a bunch of holes. Like, that team is a year away and in a rebuild. And I think they could be like a competitive rebuilding team. I think that's a totally fair take on the Titans, but I don't think that they're going to be like threatening the Texans. I think that's just tough for me to imagine. Again, unless we get some crazy breaks, which can always happen.
I will say this: 2018, the Chiefs, that was Mahomes' MVP season, and then 2019, or I guess, what did he win MVP that year? That was his like big breakout year. I don't know
18?
if he won MVP. Yeah, 18.
I thought he won MVP in 19, but maybe I'm crazy.
19, they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 20, that's where I'm saying is like, there's this expectation that, once you hit a certain point, it's like, well, they're going to take a step back or sophomore slump. I get Mahomes. It was technically his third year, but it was his second full year as a starter. He didn't take a slump. And yes, that's
right.
Mahomes.
Like it's something to think about and watch out for. And it's like progression isn't linear. It's not like, well, he was great as a rookie, so he will be like, if this tracks the way you would expect on average, he's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time next year. It's like, it doesn't necessarily work like that straight up, but
it could happen.
It could go either way. And I think we're taking that fantasy take where like him at quarterback 5 as a guy who doesn't like run that much is kind of presuming that it's going to go way more towards the best possible way. And if you're just playing the odds, that's really not the greatest value in the world. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be good or that you should be low on the actual Texans. There's a very big difference between fantasy football and real life. So I think the Texans will not miss the playoffs. But I think it's considerably more possible than like the Cowboys being third in the division. I think that one almost certainly requires injuries, where with the Texans, like maybe they get banged up a little bit and then there's like a couple of bad breaks and the rest of the AFC is really tough and you need like 11 wins to be wild card. But even that's tough to imagine. I don't know.
Mahomes did win MVP in 18. Okay. So what's right about that?
Yeah, I feel the same way, but it's really just an AFC versus NFC thing. I just think one of these conferences is way stronger than the other, so it's more likely that a good team in the AFC is more likely to miss than a good team in the NFC, just because of the quality of rosters right now. So to the pit, though, because I still don't think the Texans are going to miss.
To the pit. Mahomes had 50 touchdowns in 2018. He threw 26 in 2019, and they were a better team that won the Super Bowl. So
yeah. It's not all on Stroud.
Stroud could take a step back, and they could still be better.
The thing is, Stroud can't take a step back because he didn't throw 50 touchdowns last year.
That's true.
Like 22.
But he also only threw like 6 picks or something.
Yeah. He had the lowest interception rate in the league.
So that also plays a factor. But this next question comes from Cam4Prez 2024 saying that the Panthers will be good, much gooder than you think.
Gooder.
Well, how good do you think they'll be? That's my question.
Well, here's what I would say first and foremost about Carolina. Honestly, I'm kind of high on the Panthers. I think they could win 7 games. Okay, if that is what you're saying about a team, they suck. Honestly, dude, I think we could almost have an even record. Terrible team. I am sticking by my prediction that the Panthers are going to be a 4 or 5 win team that's like kind of feisty, like how the Cardinals were last year. That's my prediction for them. I think that their offensive line should be at least league average, you'd have to hope. Honestly, if things panned out the way they were spending, it would be a good offensive line.
I was about to say, how much they spent a lot on their offensive line, so you would hope
it's the most expensive offensive line in the NFL right now.
Things worked out the way they were spending. It's funny.
Well, I mean, that's the truth, though.
I mean, you're right, though. You're right.
A lot of if we were judging the Panthers by like real team standards, the expectation would be that they're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the league, or at least a top 10 offensive line. But because they're the Panthers and it's like, well, you got to do whatever, we're just hoping that it's like good at all, even though they're shelling out huge money. And I think it should
Panthers
be,
tax,
right?
yeah.
Right. There's a Panthers tax. Bryce, I think, will be better next year. And I think the receiver situation is improved. Thielen was actually not so bad. Johnson, I think, at least can separate. I'm certain about that. Mm-hmm. And I think Xavier Legette will actually end up being a good player despite the whole breakout age stuff. He was super, like, I thought his tape was really good. I think he's super physical, great athlete. And there's pretty good like explanation as to why his breakout age was late, other than like he's just not that good of a player, right?
Yeah, he is a bit DK. I think he can be like at least some percentage of what DK Metcalf is.
Right. And I think he's a little bit more, I think he can turn a little bit better than DK as well. I don't think their games are necessarily 1-to-1. But I'm really excited to watch Leggett. Now, of course, I have the Gamecocks banner flying behind me, so take that for what you will. So and Brooks could be good as well if he comes off his injury and looks like he did at Texas. Like, yeah, I can see the pieces coming together. But let's judge it straight
offense. But how about the defense, Matt?
The defense will be bad. The defense will be
where is the pass
rough.
rush coming from? Like,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
my thing with the Panthers is like Derek Brown can bull rush you and he gets 100 tackles. Like, he's awesome. But as your best pass rusher by far, like what? Maybe Clowney, I guess. Clowney's probably the best pass rusher.
I'm worried that the production is not going to translate for Clowney because like playing for the Panthers and playing for the Ravens are two very different things. Not to say that he isn't a solid pass rusher, but if he's going to be the number one, like they're going to have one of the worst.
He's not a 50 sack guy every year. And then if Horn gets hurt, they have no corners again.
Right. And I'm worried about like if Shaq Thompson isn't good coming off a major injury, like their linebackers are in trouble. They're still running a lot of guys out there who are sort of like filling the gap between like defense, like, you know, the changing defense going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. And I think we look at every time the Panthers sign a guy and it's like, okay, I think this dude could hold up. We act like then they're set at that position when in reality, at a lot of these positions, they're still not actually like super good. Like I think Bryce is going to improve and be solid next year, but I don't think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback or anything. I feel like that would be at the very, very high end range of his outcomes and kind of unreasonable. Mm-hmm. I think their offensive line will be okay. I think it could be pretty good, especially if Icky looks more like he did his rookie year, but I'm pretty nervous about that. I think there could still be some flaws there. Their receivers are better, but where would you rank their pass catching unit as it stands right now in the NFL? Very, very low still, incredibly low.
Yeah.
Even if you think Xavier Leggett's going to be a good rookie and Johnson will look like pretty strong, they still have a massive problem at tight end. I just think we're kind of judging this team against like last year's Panthers team, and it's like, yes, they're better, but where do they actually stack up with in the rest of the league? To me, they're still a 5-win team. Now, if you're saying 7 wins in a weak division, that's probably within range where I can be like, yeah, it could happen. I won't say that pretty much any team that is like trying or as upgraded as the Panthers can't get to 7 wins. I mean, we remember when that Giants team, won 11 and made the playoffs. Single score games can break your way. You can have the injury luck. It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. But the idea that the Panthers are going to be like kind of like sneaky good is just too far for me. They could be sneaky, a little bit more competitive than you think. They could be sneaky, get the breaks, and kind of be in the race for a while in a bad division. But I don't think they're quite ready yet, unless a lot of things start breaking their way. And I don't quite have the faith that that's all going to go green for them.
I think that a new head coach and GM will help. Isn't their GM like a former Panther?
Dan Morgan.
Player? Yeah, Dan Morgan, and then Canales, it's his first job. So maybe there'll be a bit more energy than like a retread Frank Reich under this maniacal owner with a terrible roster. Like there might be a little bit more.
Well, the maniacal owner is still there.
Right, but if you're a former Panther and it's your first job, maybe you'll like be fine to overlook that. Whereas like if you're 70 years old and you've been in the league for 40 years, you're like, I don't have to deal with this owner anymore. When it's your first job, maybe it's a little different. So I could imagine there being an injection of energy that they didn't have last year. It is a more talented offense, no doubt. Defense,
The defense is pretty rough. I mean, they downgraded at edge rusher and they were already at, not having a great pass rush, to be honest with you. But Panthers fans also have to keep in mind going into this season, let's not get too high or too excited on what maybe like the craziest top end outcome is. We just need to see growth out of Bryce Young, like serious, legitimate growth. He looks solid. He puts up more good games than bad. He looks better at the end of the season than the start. And it's like, okay, if he can be our franchise guy, if he could prove that, which I think is definitely within his range of outcomes. We'll take that. We don't care about winning 5 or 7 games long term. It's irrelevant. But if the offense looks like it's heading in the right direction and Bryce looks like he's going to be, a serious QB for a while, we're good. We're great. That's a 10 out of 10.
I will say
this edge rushing unit looks atrocious, man.
Yeah.
There is one team that I think could finish below the Panthers. Maybe even 2. I don't like the Falcons at all next year.
Hey, the NFC South,
I just don't like them at all.
Does stink though. This is why it's hard to be like you're going to the pit if you're saying the Panthers are winning 7 games because the NFC South is still
7 games could get you into the playoffs, maybe.
Right, like it's sort of
7 and 10.
This is what people were saying about the Panthers last year, though. Remember this. This is exactly what was said, almost verbatim, where it's like, well, I know they lost blah, 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 and blah, 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 but I think X, and X can be okay, and their division sucks, so they're going to win 7 games, and maybe that gets them the division. They're better than they were last year, but this is not like, you could say this almost no matter how bad the Panthers were, is my point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like the Falcons, though.
Yeah, that could be my hot take is the Falcons finish last. I just really... I didn't like their offseason at all. And I think the price may come to pay. They tampered for Kirk. They signed him. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. That's fine. Whatever. You signed him. You traded for Rondale Moore. You drafted Michael Penix. You drafted Ruka Rororo over Johnny Newton. Mm-hmm. The secondary outside of Terrell, or the corners outside of Terrell, I don't know. You signed Raheem Morris over Belichick, maybe. I think Raheem Morris did a great job last year, so maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. But still, I think Belichick did a slightly better job. I just don't know how many times they made the right move in a vacuum this offseason. It's like and last year they were supposed to be pretty damn good, right? Like last year, everybody was hyping the Falcons. They're the best team here, clearly.
Well, their quarterback play was...
But even despite that, they got a lot of... They got a lot of hype last year, I remember, and then they don't even make the playoffs. And it's like this year, the vibes are even worse. I don't know. I
will say they were competitive towards the end. Their defense was solid last year, but their offense was like one of the worst in the league. And I don't think it'll be like top 10. Like, I don't think it's going to make that big of a jump, but I think it could be like maybe league average offense. I do like Drake London a decent amount. Bijan's really good. They do have some guys there, but
if London doesn't really break out, though, they're like weapons are. I don't know. They got Pitts as well.
You need either London or
wide receiver depth. I agree is really bad, and when people start listing the names, and it's like, dude, look at their receivers, and it's like Rondale Moore. It's like, dude, what are you talking about, man? There's several unproven guys who are listed.
But they have Kadero Hodge, man.
Right, but their defense is also just really thin, I think, and they ended up playing pretty good last year, and they added Raheem Morris, who I think is a good defensive coordinator. So maybe they can stay the same, but it's just no guarantee. When you look at that defense on paper, I don't know. Their best player in the front 7 is still Grady Jarrett, and he's just getting really old. I worry. I worry.
I don't disagree entirely. I think there's maybe a level of the Cowboys stuff going on. Obviously, the Falcons aren't as good, but if you're predicting them to be the worst in the NFC South, that means that they're going to be really bad. And I still think they upgraded at quarterback. I still think their run game should be really, really good on paper. I think Bijan's going to be great, and their offensive line's good. Their weapons, I agree about the receiver depth, but overall with Bijan and Pitts and Drake London, who I do think will have a good year, I feel you. I see that. I guess maybe my big concern could be what if Kirk Cousins is not okay coming off an Achilles injury, which is totally possible, but that's just a total dice roll. And then defensively, I see your point.
Yeah, and I do like their big 3 of weapons a lot.
I'm looking at EPA per play right now. They were the number 1 run defense in the NFL last year, and they were they were roughly league average, slightly below league average against the pass. Did they get worse in that area?
No, but that's just the thing that just can disappear just like that. I feel especially with a new coordinator. again, I like Raheem Morris, so maybe I shouldn't be so low on them. But just overall, I look at the team, and maybe the Penix pick is just cloud. Like everything was bright and sunny.
Their offseason, I hated their offseason.
Everything just like turned dark and stormy and cloudy. And I'm like, what? Do these guys know what they're doing even? Like it just cast everything into doubt. But
it was a disastrous offseason. I agree with you there, but I don't know if
first year OC, like bad vibes with the quarterback right away. Defense doesn't have a lot of talent. I just cannot totally buy in. But I really do. I believe in London, and I believe in Pitts, and I believe in Bijan. So they'll really have to carry. If they can get those guys somehow like 30 touches a game combined every game, maybe things will be okay.
Yeah, I think the defense will be better than you're giving it credit for. It was good last year. They added Raheem Morris. I'm not too worried about that. The offense would be the thing that concerns me most, but they have the weapons. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the South. But
fair
we
enough.
have some more questions. Theo to the pit, to the Rancor. This next question comes from Brax. The new kickoff rules are going, or it's not a question, it's a hot take. The new kickoff rules are going to be an overwhelming success and make kickoff safer and way more interesting.
You sir, I almost worry that going to the pit.
I worry there's going to be too many touchdowns and people are going to be like, is this bad? Like people aren't going to they're not going to know quite how to fit it early, because it's just this whole new thing and maybe some blown assignments. I think we could see more returns for touchdowns and people being like, kickoffs are overpowered. Like all the stats will get messed up. I'll tweet something about how Devin Hester isn't the best anymore because like Cordero Patterson brings like 2 back in the first 2 weeks or something, and I'll be like,
and then it'll be like,
the goat.
Oh, dude, you could go ahead, rev it up right now. Put Devin Hester in the modern era, he'd have 10 touchdowns a season. I don't know. I think
hypothetical man. I'm
the Herbert of kicker.
I prefer actual results when there's like just a bunch of blown assignments in the first year, the new thing, and someone gets like 7 return touchdowns.
I definitely think there is some risk of people like if it's too good, if it's too much. I think there's definitely some world where people are like, this is totally unfair. Kickoffs are not supposed to mean this much, even though everybody likes doing the like special teams is a third of the game. Obviously, that's like not true. That's one of those sayings. It's like completely like, does anybody actually believe that? That special
special teams is like a fifth of the game.
Right. Like it's not actually, it's important. It's not actually a third of the game.
The Browns have lost games on special teams before.
Oh, so have the Packers.
So have the Packers, Theo.
Yeah, but this is how we're talking about.
Fucked.
Imagine
but they're like still the 1 seed, right?
Imagine if my take was, I've actually seen the Panthers lose a game because of offense. Like, yeah. I've seen them lose a game because their defense is bad. Yeah. But you could say that about special teams because special teams isn't as important as those two things, obviously. There's that one Chargers team that had like such a disaster at special teams. They were awesome and they didn't make it or whatever, and they like blew every one-score game.
I mean, that's the thing is like having a bad special team sticks out more. It's something that you can take for granted. And it's like, oh, you're just supposed to hit your extra point. You're just supposed to not give up kick return touchdowns. But like, you do have to be good at special teams.
However, getting back to the question or the conversation, I definitely think there's a world where it's like too much and people like kind of push back against that. I think in a perfect world, there's just more variety. Like you see some more returns, but it doesn't happen like every single game, or like there's only 1 or 2 every weekend. But there's also some like big field position swings that happen because of it. And then there's some teams that are like really good at it and they do a great job defending it and it matters. So I think the idea is that it should boost how important special teams is, but certainly there's a potential for it to get like too out of hand. So where like it's too powerful or teams aren't ready to defend it and it pisses people off. However, I think that teams will adapt.
They will.
And I think that this makes kickoffs safer. Absolutely. There's no question about that. And just point blank more exciting, more interesting, with more returns. I mean, the modern kickoff right now is terrible. It's a horrible play. It's boring. It's touchback so many times. Rarely do, like, when they don't touch it back, does it actually mean anything? And I think adding more folds to that part of the game is obviously beneficial. So I'm more excited about it than I have like any NFL rule change in a long time, to be honest with you. Like, I'm pumped about this, dude. I think it's going to be so much fun. But I guess I'm saying there's a sliver where you're wrong in terms of public perception on it initially. But even with that being considered, with most of these things, given enough time, people get used to it and they come around. I think people are just naturally against things like this early. However, it's only 1 year to start with. So maybe if people are like too negative against it and there's just a few more returns, it gets taken away, which would be a shame. But I think it's more likely than not that you're right and people will end up really, really liking it once they get used to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be a success as long as it's safer. There are numbers that the NFL could certainly share on how many injuries exactly happened on kickoffs. And as long as that number is lower, I'm really fine with whatever happens. If the number, so yeah, I think it'll be a success. I think it'll be a success. Like I said, the only thing I'm concerned about is it's too successful early, and
they need to adjust onsides to the fourth down stuff. They probably need to go ahead and do that now because the onside is not going to look the same. So you can't sneak, secretly pull one out.
How does an onside work now?
You just line up like you're doing an onside. You just can't.
You have to tell. You have to tell people that you're doing it.
You just can't do it.
No
as
more
a secret.
Surprises.
Which the onside kick is just so stupid anyway. Like, if we were redesigning football from the ground up, onside kicks just wouldn't exist. It's kind of like it's something only built around like a previous rule, and now it doesn't make any sense. I really like the 4th and 12 or 4th and 15 stuff. I think that's way more interesting. And
we only do onside kicks for the history and the culture of football.
Pretty
at
much.
This point.
I don't know. Some special teams coaches would beat your ass for saying that, but I don't really care strongly one way or the other.
And rightfully so. Special teams coaches, if you're listening, I'm very sorry. I've also discounting how important special teams is because, like, hypothetically, like, you could like fumble the ball and then it goes for 7 and it's like, see. But that could also happen on any play. Like, we don't have to debate offense or defense value. It's just not a third of the game. It's important, but it's not a third of the game.
Yeah, and I like this rule a lot more than like abolishing special teams, which always gets floated. Like, just keep it at the 25, like right off the bat. Like, don't even do a kickoff. See, I like this rule a lot better. I think you need to keep special teams because the rosters are 53 people, and on special teams, people who are not the starters.
Like 30 of those dudes to do.
Yeah, but no doubt though. Like,
he's not wrong.
Special teams units are. Otherwise, guys are just going to be sitting around all practice, like never getting an opportunity to even touch the grass. Like, you need
like the backup receivers. They don't do anything. They don't even like.
They don't do anything. They just get fat
instead of.
They just get lazy and fat, and they'll come onto the field and be garbage.
If we don't have special teams, we're gonna have so many NFL players who're just gonna play Xbox and eat donuts all day. We can't have it.
That's what I'm saying. So
they're gonna be TikTokers and make a podcast, and
they're gonna be podcasting on the sideline without special teams.
And we don't need any more competition. So keep special teams, please, please, please.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think
it's actually the only podcast. They're actually just us and Nerd Stash.
I think the real argument for always keeping special teams is just the variety of things that can happen. Like a blocked punt or kickoff return, like interesting and exciting things. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, and this is true for all sports, even now, where I'm just getting into them, where it's like you hear about some like weird thing that can happen or some interesting event, and like there's just like a weird sequence. Those are always like super exciting to see, and when they occasionally happen, it's always really fun to watch. You just have teams start at the 25. It's like, when are you ever going to have a safety? It just feels like it'd be really, really rare.
Yeah. And that's what makes football. That's why football is the best sport, is just the most things can happen in it. And special teams is a big part of that. You can't take away my double doinks. You can't take away my fumbled snaps to fumbled punts. So Michigan wins, something like that. Like, it's those are classic moments. So there must continue to be special teams.
The kick six we're taking away? No, that can't.
The kick six, yeah. The special teams must be protected to to a large extent, because there's a lot of demons and devils out there who would love nothing more than to take it away.
Myles Garrett won Defensive Player of the Year because of a special teams play.
True. He was due. That's how you know. But what's the next hot take?
Well, the next ones are from our anonymous submissions.
Our panel
of Huel Jinkleys.
One of them was the Chiefs go 17-0.
What is the path to that, man?
They're going to be really good
every game.
They won the Super Bowl, and it kind of feels like they did not get that much worse. And if you believe in like the path to the Chiefs going 17-0, not that I think it will happen. I'm probably going to bet against something that's like never ever happening. However, maybe you believe that their defense will be mostly back, but you think the explosive plays on offense are going to be there because of Brown and Xavier Worthy. That would be how you would predict it to happen, and that Kelsey doesn't take too big of a step back, and their offense returns a lot of that explosiveness that it used to have, or it still obviously does, but you know what I mean. And then defensively, they're still like huge, and then they also don't play a very tough division where none of those teams are looking to be that competitive this upcoming year. So they get a bunch of freebies, and then also they get a bunch of breaks to go their way, which you would need.
The problem is they play the AFC North. So it goes Ravens, Bengals weeks 1 and 2. And that could put this take to bed right away. 17-0 is probably a bit ambitious, but I do think that this could be the best regular season Chiefs team that we have seen yet.
I think that's possible.
I think the deep ball is going to be back. I think Kelsey is still a top 5 tight end, as old as he is. I think the defense is top 10. And I think Mahomes could contend for an MVP in a way that he didn't last year and the year before without Tyreek. So if you can get an MVP level Mahomes season, which he's always... I mean, it's been long enough that he hasn't won 1 year? So it's been long enough that he could win it again.
He could.
With these weapons, I think that they're going to be really good. The main concern that I would have,
the last undefeated team we had was the 07 Patriots. They were the number 1 offense in the league in all of yards, touchdowns, or yards, points, and turnovers. They were also a top 5 defense in yards and points and a top 10 defense in turnovers.
I think the Chiefs will be all that.
Okay.
I mean, so they'd have to be. So they'd have to be awfully good if they wanted to go undefeated.
I mean, they have to be perfect. Like Mahomes has to have like 55 touchdowns.
That seemed to be.
You have to be basically as good as my flag football team. You know. Anything less than that. And
well, what tips would you give them, Blaiden? I mean, you're coming off an undefeated 8-0 flag football team.
Well, so they've got the first thing, which is a quarterback. You know, we had a pretty good quarterback ourselves, and that was kind of a big part of it. You've got to have a lot of depth, so that you don't have guys getting gassed. Would you say the Chiefs have enough depth to get it done?
Do they have enough depth? Well,
they'd have to get really lucky with injuries, obviously. But like anything that like needs to break their way, like clearly they would need all of it to break their way. Like it's not going to happen. It's very, very long odds. We know that. But is this like kind of, like, do you think this team will be better than last year's team in the regular season? Like it kind of feels like, yeah. And it's like, dude, they might be 14, 15 win team. It's totally possible. In a weak division, totally possible. And if you think a team's going to win 14 games and you wanted to be crazy, 17-0 is not that wild, especially when it's like, I don't know, with such a downswing and kind of like the offense last year and what they've added, it feels like we could definitely get a lot of that back.
Yeah, I just think about how, 7 points in the playoffs first game against the Dolphins, then holding the Bills to 21, not a crazy low total, but the Bills are a high-powered offense. Then 10 points to the Ravens. The 49ers could only get 22, including overtime. Like their defense just looks so special, and I think that their defense can rank pretty damn high next year. McDuffie looks all pro. Chris Jones is obviously all pro. They lost L'Jarius Sneed, but I believe they can replace him, and they have the defensive coordinator to develop his replacement. I don't know. I just think that it was 7 years after the first Patriots Super Bowl that they went undefeated. This is going to be 6 years after the Chiefs' first Super Bowl win. This might be kind of when they hit their prime a little bit, even though Kelsey's a bit older. I think that they did enough at receiver to kind of, Rashee Rice, another year in the league, like he was looking really special last year towards the end. So I just think there's not a team on paper that stacks up to them right now.
How long is he going to be suspended for? Do we know yet?
We haven't heard anything about it, and I feel like the longer it drags on, the less likely it is to be some sort of massive suspension.
Probably. But hey, I don't.
Yeah, this team on paper looks nuts. I won't lie.
So I'm not going to the pits.
Not the pit, but you're on thin ice.
Considering Huel, yeah.
Huel Jinkley, you're safe for now.
Yeah, we could admit it, Sometimes you just want to talk about a hot take that not even you necessarily really believe, but you think is maybe a little bit more possible than people think, or something that could potentially happen. Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Were there any others that you can recall?
The Bills finished last.
This was one that we actually got a decent amount, like people being low or very high on the Bills. The range of outcomes is one that we got a lot on Twitter. Sorry, we're not saying your name specifically. I think the Bills will probably still be pretty good next year. I don't think that they'll be last. I think this is... I agree with the Diggs stuff. Like maybe they don't look as great on paper, but like their offense is still going to be phenomenal. I know that for a fact. And defensively, I just don't buy into them being a disaster or anything. Maybe you think that they aren't going to reach, those upper echelons like we've seen them in the past. But I think they've still got enough talent, especially if Milano comes back and he's strong, to be very serviceable. I have bigger concerns about the Jets, undebatably. Their offense could straight up not be that great next year if Rodgers is like suffering on that Achilles injury. Again, injuries can always get you. And I like the Dolphins roster on paper. I think they're going to be really good. Obviously, the Jets are going to have their fantastic defense, but last would mean they're even below the Patriots, no?
Yeah,
it would have to be pretty high on
how
New
would
England,
they possibly get below New England? That's the first thing I mean,
the Patriots defense could be good, right? That would be the main thing, is you trust the defense to still be good even without Belichick. And then you would need enormous faith in Drake May to turn that offense around.
It might not even start week 1, right?
No,
I think Brissett.
It might be Brissett throwing to some of the worst receivers in the NFL. As far as that's not going to be better than Josh Allen and the Bills. The Jets, I think, could be, but they've got more question marks in my mind. And the Dolphins, I think, are certainly uber competitive, maybe even the favorite, honestly. But I don't think they're going to finish last. I think they'll probably be about as good as they were last year, to be honest with you.
My concern with the Bills would be mainly the defense. The offense, I think, can survive because they have Josh Allen. But I do think they have the worst defense in the division. Now, the offense can counteract that. But the loss of Poyer, is Hyde still a free agent? He's not with the team anymore, is he? He's a free agent still.
I have no idea where
maybe
he
could. Yeah. He's a free agent. So there's no Poyer, no Hyde. Trey White is gone. So the secondary is going to be dicey. Their pass rush, it still has Ed Oliver. They still have Matt Milano, who's great coming downhill. But if the secondary is bad, is the pass rush going to cover up any flaws back there? It's maybe not quite that good.
I think the front seven is pretty good.
Yeah, Milano and Oliver is pretty formidable.
Quan Jones had a good year last year, and their linebackers are actually, I'd say, easily above average as far as the NFL goes. And we see how bad some linebacker units get. If you believe in Milano to come back at all, and then Bernard had a really good, or is it Bernard? Yeah, Bernard had a really good year last year. So I think their front seven is still pretty strong. Agree about the secondary. That's definitely the weak point of the team.
You're asking a lot out of Alam. And
yeah, their depth. They also didn't suffer any injuries on the offensive line last year, which helped them.
But they suffered a lot of injuries defensively.
In general, you're right about that. That's a good point. Yeah, I think below the Patriots is probably too much to ask.
They're your Cowboys.
They are my Cowboys. They're going to get Panthers.
They have an even better QB. They're going to get Panthers.
You know, the Panthers were 15-1. They won the Super Bowl. Think about the Bills. They are the Panthers, right? Like they just.
Well, I mean, they've always been built very much like the Panthers.
Yeah, and the Panthers fell off. It's their time.
All right. Bro.
Yeah, but the Panthers went 15-1 and went to the Super Bowl when the receiving core was terrible. So honestly, they might hit their peak.
That's very true. Right. That's very true.
If this is the worst group of weapons that Allen has had, then this is going to be his best season.
Wait, hold on. What year is it for? What year was Cam? Year 5. This is past year 5 for Allen. This is year 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dang. Okay.
It's close enough.
They're gonna suck.
The defense is gonna fall off. Allen is gonna take too much of a beating and fall off. It's gonna happen the exact same way. Sean McDermott's gonna get fired mid-season.
He's gonna get sent to the Rancor pit.
He is. But at any rate, is it possible that the San Francisco 49ers don't finish first? Maybe in the is it a hot take to say in the entire NFC that they're not the 1 seed? I was thinking not first in their division, but that might be too impossible.
I think it legitimately is a hot take. I mean, the argument would probably be against it. It's like, well, what if they get injured? And they do have a lot of injury-prone guys. They have sort of specced their team into not caring about that as much, it feels like. Mm-hmm. Trading a bunch for McCaffrey was sort of a call on like, we do not care. But barring them like not getting banged up, I don't see the path to. Maybe the Eagles could be better than them. Maybe if you're like really buy into the offense being back, and then there's just like enough variation. I think there'll be teams within a couple of wins of them. So, you know, I think it's possible. But if we're talking about like if someone were to just predict it straight up, it's pretty tough. I think they are kind of head and shoulders the best team.
What would it take for a team to beat them out for the 1 seed in their division?
It would. I mean, I think the Seahawks are the only team with a prayer. Maybe the Rams could if Stafford just has the greatest year of his life. Like the offense is just.
I mean, that defense is going to be so bad.
I know. It's without Donald. It's really tough to imagine, but. Maybe McVay is just in his bag or something because they've got, or Cooper Kupp goes back to 2021 levels. It would have to be something crazy.
Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both go nuclear.
I still see the defensive vision for Seattle. I mean, they have a lot of talent. They have Byron Murphy. Yeah. They have Leonard Williams. They're going to have Uchenna Nwosu coming back. Boye Mafe took some strides last year. They've got Witherspoon, they've got Woolen, they've got Julian Love, they've got a lot plus McDonald entering the fold where they could enjoy a boost on that end. And I still think Geno is very much that guy. So I could see
they are missing their best defensive player from last year though.
Wagner? Who is
Wagner? What?
Brooks. Well, yeah, the linebacker situation's an issue. I wouldn't say Brooks was their best defensive player last year, even though we like him.
Who would you?
I'd probably say Witherspoon. I don't know. Maybe it was Brooks. Brooks is kind of near the top, but maybe it was Leonard Williams. I think Leonard Williams is probably the best defensive player on the team currently. I think that he's a bit disrespected. Maybe Byron Murphy. The main thing about them is just the depth. They've got all these just different players in the front seven, and especially the front four. That is exciting to me. So I can maybe, like, if everything hit perfect for the Seahawks, I can maybe see them finishing first. I don't see it for the Cardinals. I think their offense could be really good, but their defense is even worse than the Rams, I'd say, on paper. So
Seattle's in striking distance, but they need the offensive line to be better than it. They need the offensive line to not be a disaster, which
but they need their offensive line to be like really good. Like Lucas and Cross need to be Pro Bowlers, and
they just need to be healthy, man. They missed like all of last year.
But we're talking about surpass. I mean, when was the last time the Seahawks even beat the 49ers? You know, like they're gonna have to. It can't just be guys are healthy. You know, guys are gonna have to all take strides.
That's true.
So. Yeah, it's a lot of ifs. I think I like the 49ers.
I do think Geno is super underrated. I do think all of Geno, Kyler, and Stafford are pretty underrated right now.
Yeah.
I don't think Stafford's underrated.
Some people still underrate him. I don't know, because he's like a couple years removed now from the Super Bowl, so people aren't like they're not hypnotized by he's a winner. Mm-hmm. So now they've dialed back a little bit.
And they need to re-hypnotize themselves. I see.
Geno's definitely underrated.
Yes.
Geno's 100% underrated. He's probably the most underrated quarterback right now. But I don't think the 49ers will finish second in the division. I think they're still first. I do think that for the 1 seed, they are a little vulnerable. Losing Armstead is not nothing. I think Purdy just was so far and away number 1 in all the efficiency metrics that potentially he could regress a little bit, just because it's hard to get much more effective than he was last year. McCaffrey healthy all 17 games. That's not a lock every single year. And I think the Packers and Lions are just kind of ready to really contend.
The Lions. So, my hot take that I've been brewing in my head that I don't really know if I believe is that the Lions are one of the top threats to win the Super Bowl. Like, I've been mulling if I have the guts to actually call a Lions Super Bowl. And that is totally partially because people are just low on them for no reason other than like, well, they just won't be lucky. And it's like, okay, well, that's nothing to me to say that they won't be lucky. And I think undebatably, like, this team was a play away from the Super Bowl, and they got way better. They got way better this offseason. Like,
I think they won the draft, and they got DJ Reader. And
I mean, like, and I think to say that team is not a contender is just crazy to me. And I think it's lowness basically off of the fact that we've been hearing about them a little bit too long. So people are sick on them, and Goff got paid. And even though that's not in effect even right this second, and I don't even necessarily disagree with them paying him, people are already dinging the current Detroit team for that, which doesn't make any sense. I agree. I think the secondary has to prove itself. I think the receiver depth is rough.
That's I remember last year
that really
and that killed him in the playoffs was outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, the receivers were dropping passes. Like, I know they cut Reynolds,
I'm
right?
Very
he dropped
frustrated
so many.
They did nothing to address that, to be honest with you.
Well, they're just hoping that Jameson is the guy.
Yeah.
But
that makes me a little nervous because he just has not proven that whatsoever. He just hasn't proven that he is the guy whatsoever as it stands right now. And even if they went and just like got somebody who I felt like I could trust a little bit more to be a number 2, you would think that they had among the best weapons in the entire NFL. You really would. I guess I'm not that like crazy. Like, their defense was still awesome last year, or their offense, I mean. And I think their defensive tackle duo could be unbelievable.
They're going to be so good against the run. They're going to be so good against the run. So
good. And I believe in what they've done at defensive back. Like, I think they're going to be better. I really, really do. I think it's going to be a huge jump. And an NFC where, you know, you want to talk about a team getting like the 49ers got breaks last year too. It's like, could they run it back and have the 49ers game break their way? Yeah. And I don't think there's anyone that
off their defensive back's face mask and into the arms of IU.
Yeah, it's like they could. There's no reason why they can't get the breaks. It's almost like, you know, you go to the roulette table and it shows you it's landed on black like 4 times in a row, and that's supposed to make you feel like it's going to be red. I think that's the same logic that people are applying here to the Lions going into this season, where they're like, well, they got pretty lucky injury-wise last year, which they did. And like, going to the NFC Championship game is hard, and you just need some natural breaks, which you do. And that's true for every single team, pretty much no matter what. But just because they didn't get hurt last year doesn't mean we should be low on them this year. Like, yeah, over the course of like 10, 20 seasons, I bet you most teams are going to be about as hurt as each other, and things typically even out. But that doesn't mean that things are like, they aren't actually due to get mangled in this one season. That's not being to...
The luck odds are the same every year.
Right.
There's equal odds to be unlucky every year.
And I will say the NFC North is going to be tough. It's going to be a tough dog fight. But in the same way that I think, the Packers or the Bears could come out of it, I think the Lions are still the favorite, and I think there's no reason why they couldn't still have control and make a run in the playoffs, even if they don't win the NFC North.
Here's maybe a hot take from me. I am extremely confident that the Bears finish third and the Vikings finish fourth. I feel very good about that.
So the Vikings, you're low on McCarthy, and you think their defense has too many holes.
Yes.
Fair enough. I think that's an easy one to see, particularly since like every other team looks pretty good in the NFC North and isn't going to have too many growing pains, you'd think.
The Bears, I feel like they have the worst trenches compared to the Packers and Lions by far on both sides of the ball. And I think they have the worst running back by far on both sides of the ball, or on one side of the ball. What am I talking about? And I just think that although the weapons are cool and Caleb is cool, they're very young. And the thing that the Packers and the Lions do better than anyone else is just the basic offensive things, just like running the football, just the easy stuff. They're better at the easy stuff. So, and they're at this point, they're vets, and the Bears are kind of not. They have more talented coaches, I think. They have better trenches. I think the Bears could build something and get better than those teams, but I don't think it's going to happen year one. I think just because you're infusing Caleb and Rome, it's going to be a huge jump, but I still think the inexperience, and I just don't know where the easy offense is coming from with the Bears compared to the Lions and the Packers. I don't think that they're going to arrive right away. I think that they are still rookies, a lot of these players that we're banking on. We're not going to get prime Caleb Williams year one, I think. Although I still believe in them. I think we could have 3 playoff teams from this division. I feel pretty confident in the Bears finishing third.
I can get down with that. I think the Bears will be close enough to where them like beating out the Packers is completely within the realm of possibility for me. But I also can definitely agree with the perspective of the Lions have a really good passing offense. The Packers have a really good passing offense, and the Bears are probably going to. But when it comes to rushing, like I'm taking the Packers and I'm taking the Lions over both of them. And then I don't see some like big defensive head up that the Bears would have on Green Bay or Detroit necessarily. I don't think
and there was a gap last year, right? I just don't know. I think they did a good job closing that gap, the other 2 teams.
Right, exactly. Like I think the Lions defense is now upgraded enough so where I know their offense is going to be good. I just don't think I don't think the Bears quite have it on them yet. And then I think the Packers have sort of filled a few of their gaps too. So I think all those teams are going to have like pretty respectable defenses. And I can definitely agree with the consistency of the Packers and the Lions offensively will probably be better than the Bears. And that's okay because it's year one for Chicago. We're kind of having pretty, like they're going to win like one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, like year one. And to say anything else is like, disrespect. It's pretty crazy expectations. Caleb could still have bad games early on. They should be really good. They're really exciting. I can get down with the high end upside, and I still think off the top of my head, I'm picking them to make the playoffs. However, I seeing Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings is very, very possible for me. And that probably would be my prediction as it stands right now.
I would probably agree. Vikings is an obvious 4. Like, I don't even think we have to discuss that.
We'll do an NFC North entire video and round out my thoughts, because I haven't really like taken a deep dive into what I think like each unit is going to be for each team exactly.
I guess that's fair.
But I see what you mean about the consistency of the Bears offense and them not having like some like way bigger.
Yeah, I think that'll be as good as any team at maybe explosive plays, but just like the down to down consistency and the fact that they're going to spread way out and pass it at a much higher rate is going to be a real shock to the offensive line. And I worry about that a little bit as well. I mean, I just don't really worry about the lines of the Packers and the Lions and the running backs of those teams and all that. So, yeah, I think that'll do it, though, for all the hot takes. We basically gave a little NFC North division preview there at the end. But
a little bit.
We have.
That's all right.
Sneak peek for what's to come.
Nothing wrong with it.
No, nothing at all. But that will do it for another episode of Stay Hot. We know we missed the live stream last week, but we will be back. We know you're all very eager to watch the best Madden trio of all time. But until then, and until our next episode, thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, we will catch you on the flippity flop.